Good morning. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritam Gamaya Avirmaedhi Rudrayate Dakshinamukam Te Namam Bahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. Let us sit quietly for a few moments and meditate on the Supreme Spirit in any way we please. Om Bhadrang Karnevi Shruniyama Devaha Bhadram Pasyemakshbhiryajatraha Sthirairangaestuštuvagam sastanubihi Vyasema Deva Hitai Yadayuhu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we enjoy with strong limbs and bodies the life allotted to us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. For the welfare of all. Now, this expression, for the welfare of all, occurs in two places in the Bhagavad Gita. Sarva bhuta hite rataha. Rataha means let them be satisfied, let them be pleased with what? With sarva bhuta hita. Hita means the welfare of all beings. That same phrase is repeated twice, sarva bhuta hite rataha, delighting in the welfare of all beings. So the question is, there must be something very significant, because other things are not repeated like this. This particular expression was repeated twice. And then there are other indications. For instance, what's the motto that Swami Vedananda chose for the Ramakrishna mission? Atmano mokshartam jagat hitaya cha. That is the motto of the Ramakrishna order. Atmano mokshartam, moksha, the liberation of the Atman, of the self, of the individual. Atmano mokshartam, for the sake of the liberation, the freedom of the individual, jagat hitaya cha, and for the welfare of the world. So when Swami Vedananda organized the Ramakrishna mission, this became its motto. Then Sri Ramakrishna himself, at one point, he was traveling in a party with Mathur, the owner of the Dakshineshwar temple, or the manager of the Dakshineshwar temple, and a large party of people who were going on a pilgrimage to Kashi, to Varanasi. And they had to stop every once in a while on the riverside. They went up the rivers, up the Ganga to Varanasi. So every once in a while they would stop and have a camp on the side where they would spend the night. So at one point they came and their boat stopped at the ghat, and there was a large crowd of villagers, very poor, very emaciated, with very worn out clothing, very sad looking. And they were explaining that there had been scarcity in that area. They had no food or very little food. very little clothing. A whole village was sitting there at the riverbank. And Sri Ramakrishna told Mathur, who was the organizer of the pilgrimage, he said, stop the boats here, give them all food, give them all clothing, see that they are satisfied. And Mathur said, oh, Father, what are you saying? We have to go all the way to Varanasi, so much expenses there. How can I distribute a mountain of food here? Let us go on. So Sri Ramakrishna sat down on the shore and he said, I'm not going on with you. You go on yourself if you want. Unless you take care of these people, I'm not moving from here. Sarvabhuta hita, for the welfare of all beings. So this becomes a very important aspect normally when we talk about spiritual life and trying to realize what is taught in the scriptures of the different religions, trying to have a actual contact with the Supreme Power, with God. Normally, this is what is emphasized. Of course, in certain aspects of Christianity, public service and the welfare of beings is also very much mentioned, very much urged. Because Jesus did that during his lifetime. He showed that compassion and that benevolence, and he urged that should be the model for those people who want to realize God. So there is a strong emphasis like this in various religions. The Dalai Lama frequently talks about compassion, and compassion is again in that same category. So the original purpose is to realize God. I want to experience the reality of that supreme power, of that infinite blessedness, of that great joy I want to experience, which has been so glowingly described in the scriptures. That is what I want, that is what I want. So that should be my center. So is this a detour that I should now concentrate a certain aspect of my striving on the welfare of all beings? What does it have to do with the central idea? Why is it so much emphasized? So these are parts of a whole. And the part is what we tend to do as human beings. We tend to emphasize the part and not so much, and yearn for the whole, but we tend to emphasize the part. But what religions teach us is that there is no part to the infinite and the eternal. There are no sections to it. I do this, and this enables me to realize spiritual truths, to realize God, to experience divinity. I'll just do this. For some time we can do that, but constantly it's pointed out to us that what is really true here is a whole. There is a reality, there's a whole, there's a totality. And that is, if one part of it is emphasized, that is good, that is a pathway, that is a road. That is a way to realize what, these essential truths of religion. But we cannot ignore the whole. You cannot say, I will go into that spiritual realm, into that spiritual realization, and all these other things. After I attain it, I will do all these things. That is not realistic, as is frequently pointed out. As the Gita points out in 2 places with exactly the same wording. So it's an unusual emphasis. And it emphasizes something more profound, actually. Not only that we should look at our road, the path ahead, in a total fashion, all different aspects of the spiritual search should be emphasized, but it points to a very profound reality that really there is no multiplicity. There's no clear-cut point where you can say, here God ends and here the world begins. This was one of our Swamis, Swami Vedananda in Hollywood, had this experience with his own teacher, Swami Brahmananda. And there was some problem that was being discussed, and Swami Brahmananda's statement is very significant. He said, show me the point of demarcation where the world ends and God begins. Show me the line of demarcation. The point is that, of course, we all know, intellectually we all know that there cannot be any difference, that if it is divinity that we are seeking, it has to be all-pervading, it has to be all-inclusive. There cannot be a boundary beyond which the world begins, and on this side is God, on that side is the world. We take care of the world for practical reasons, but we're aiming for God. To make that distinction is, for practical reasons, we may have definite reasons for emphasizing one thing or another. That is another matter. But in our total viewpoint, we should not find that difference. There should not be such a difference. It should be all divinity. Whatever it is, at heart is a divine reality. And of course, science has tried to, in its own way, try to find out what is the reality at the heart of things. And wherever they look, they only find more matter. There doesn't seem to be any end to matter. No matter how finely you tune your instruments to try to discover some point at which matter ends, there's no end to the universe. There's the expansion of the universe into incredible dimensions, the collapse of it into a hot spot that again explodes into another creation. All of these things, you can never come to the end of it. You can never come to a point where you say, this is the universe, and on this side is the universe, on that side there is nothing. The concept of nothing does not exist. The problem is that which exists is thought to be material. And the purpose of religion is to emphasize it appears to be material, and it has characteristics that follow the laws of nature, but actually We don't know what it is. We have not come to the end of it, and we cannot make any statement about it. Science comes to that point, at least so far. Who knows, maybe some further development will create a more significant knowledge on the subject. But science cannot tell us what it is. It can tell us it is nature, but what is it really? That is the province of religion. And for a long time when we're seeking, we also are in that same situation. We don't know what it is. But we make models. One model is the saints and sages. We pay reverence to the saints and sages because they explain that they have experienced that reality. Vedaham etam purusham ahantam. I know, that is the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, I know that Supreme Being, the sage is saying, beyond the darkness, ever effulgent. So the sages claim that they have experienced that, and they claim that, further that there are pathways that we also can experience what this really is. What is our experience really like? So one of the explanations, or one of the searches, is described, very nicely described in the Upanishads, the Taittiriya Upanishad, especially in the third section of the Taittiriya Upanishad, Bhriguvali. Bhrigu is the student and Varuna is the teacher. Varuna is actually his father and also his spiritual teacher. And he comes to his father and say that he wants to know what is this reality. So his father explains to him, and it's very interesting because this is our search also. The Upanishad is telling how one particular spiritual aspirant achieved that understanding, that experience. But that is a lesson for us because we're all spiritual aspirants trying to experience that spiritual reality. And the first, the question that he asks is, please, he says, explain to me, tell me about Brahman. And so the father has to explain to his son now what he should do, how to realize that, how to experience that spiritual reality that he is looking for. And he gives him this clue. And the son follows this clue in a number of different ways. But it's very revealing to us because we're also doing this. So he says, I'll quote it in Sanskrit first because it's very poetic and you hear the sound of the words. The Upanishads really are poetry, and so because they're talking about something which is infinitely beautiful and infinitely glorious, and they're trying to express it in words which try to mimic that infinite aspect of it. So the father tells him, the son asks the father, what should I do to realize that supreme reality, to realize God, to realize Brahman, to actually experience that spiritual reality. Yato va imani bhutani jayante. That you should seek for what? Imani bhutani, all these beings, all these entities, jayante yato, from where all these beings, jayante, are born. From where are all these beings born? Where do they come from? Yena jatani jivanti. Jatani, again, these beings, jivanti, they live yena. By means of what? What supports their life? So where do they come from? What supports their life? They're looking for Brahman, they're looking for the support of everything, the reality, the essential truth in this universe, which has not been found in any physical search, has not been found in any intellectual search. So now this student-teacher relationship is to develop a method whereby this can be found in a spiritual way. So, where all these beings come, seek to know this, where all these beings come from, that by which they manage to exist, and yat prayanti, that by means of which they go. Yat prayantyavisam vishanti, that from according to which they go. So what brings all beings, what brings all realities into existence? What sustains them during their existence? And what is it into which they merge when they finally go? As all of them have always been known to disappear. They come from somewhere, they exist by means of something, and they disappear into something. What is that? Seek to know that. Tad vijignasaswa. We seek to know that. Tad Brahma, Tad Brahmeti, that is Brahman. So how is he supposed to do that? How is he supposed to search for that reality? How does he search for God? Satapo tapyata, he did austerity. Tapas, he did austerities. Austerities means, spiritual austerities means trying to control the exterior so that the interior becomes perceptible. That is the basic principle behind it. It's not to try to do something which is deliberately painful and deliberately austere, and by that I will somehow elevate myself to that level. That's not the point. The point is that that reality which we are seeking for is present all around us all the time. But we have no idea about it. We don't experience it. Why don't we experience it? Because our attention is not there. Our attention is exclusively on the things of the body to enable the body to survive, to grow, to prosper. On the level of the mind, to develop the mind, to develop the intellect. But it is not on... In other words, we're doing all the things that are necessary to survive very well in this world, but there is nothing that leads us beyond this world, because we know this world does not itself reflect that reality. Without further investigation, it does not reflect the reality. Although another Upanishad says, Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma, all of this is Brahman. But do we see it as such? No. We see it as material things or as intellectual things. So the point of austerity is to control that external aspect so that we can concentrate on the reality within. It's actually a very scientific method. It is quite the logical process that you would expect would have to be done. So seek to know that from which all beings originate, that which sustains them once they have achieved this existence, and that into which they disappear. That is Brahman. So now, of course, the boy does his homework, and he performed his, he started his studies and made suitable efforts. And what did he find out? Well, the obvious thing. Why? Of course, annam brahmeti vyajanat. Anna, food. Actually, food is the answer to all this. Everything comes into existence because of food. Everything is sustained by food. And when it disappears, it again merges in the natural scene and becomes food again for creating other things. So he goes, he thinks about that. Yes, obviously, that must be true. So this is Brahman. Then he thinks, well, but the problem is, there's a problem about that. And the problem is that it's perishable. Whatever is created from food can be destroyed. So how can food, although it accepts or adheres partly to that definition, but how can that be that from which everything comes, that by which everything is sustained, and that into which everything disappears? That can only be a superficial understanding. So he goes back to his father. And he says, Father, teach me Brahman. Obviously, this so far I have not been able to understand it. So then father tells him only the same thing. Do austerities, perform austerities. In other words, go back and think about it. So the boy thinks about it. He thinks about, okay, it's not food. I've eliminated food. Well, but certainly energy, prana, is present everywhere. So from prana, different forms of prana, everything emerges. By energy, it is sustained. That is quite obvious. And into energy, it disappears. When it disappears, it's converted into other forms of energy. That must be Brahman. He thinks about it a little bit and he says, well, no, prana is not really conscious. Prana is unconscious. So that could not be that infinite conscious divine reality. So he goes back to his father. Father, teach me about Brahman. And the father again tells him the same thing. That from which everything is born, that by which everything is sustained, that into which everything merges, that is Brahman. Think about it, perform austerities, do studies, and in other words, perform austerities means be serious about it. That is the real meaning of austerity. It's not to harm ourselves, it's not to cause ourselves pain or discomfort. Perform austerities means, for God's sakes, be serious about it. If you're really serious, the answer will come to you. Also, this implies the idea that the answer that is given to us doesn't really stick with us very well. The answer that we have to struggle for becomes part of our own essence, becomes part of our belief system, our consciousness. So the boy goes back, and then he again performs austerities. No, food was not it, energy is not it. So then he comes to mind. Oh, mind is the mind. From the mind, everything is by the mind, everything is understood. And by the mind, it is, our consciousness of it is maintained. And mentally, we can see things disappear. So the mind must be the thing. That must be Brahman, from which everything comes, by which everything is sustained, into which it dissolves. But the problem is, mind cannot, he thinks about it for a while, and he finds that, no, prana is unconscious, food is perishable, mind is also changeable. So that one of the basic definitions of that divine reality we're after is that it is eternal and unchangeable. It is the basis of everything. It is the essence of everything. It is that which is beyond all change. But mind is changeable. So mind cannot be mental, the mental aspect cannot be the essence of reality, cannot be Brahman. So again he goes back. You must admit this boy has a lot of patience. So he tries again, and he finds, the next thing he finds is Vijnana. Vijnana, he thinks Vijnana. Vijnana is generally defined as, well, it is intelligence, but it is that within us which is the life force or the intelligence force or the directive force. It is the purposive aspect of us. That seems to be present in all actions, in all aspects of our life. So that must be the source. That must be the divine principle that causes us to exist and sustains us, and into which everything is resolved at the end. But then he thinks about it again, and he says, no, this intelligent agent, this Vijnana Maya Kosha, is exposed to pleasure and pain. It increases and decreases in terms of its awareness. So none of these, it cannot be that fundamental, all-supporting, unchangeable divine principle. So then he again goes to his father. Of course, the father says, again, do more austerities. What that all implies is that the truth is within each one of us. Each one of us is utterly able to realize God. That is what this Upanishad example says. It isn't anything that we need from the outside. What we get from the outside is a stimulus and a direction. But eventually we find that really all directions lead to that one reality. So actually, that reality is built into our own system. And so none of these things which deal with the external in any way can be that reality. So his father tells him, go back again, and he does that, his austerities again, and then he finds that Anandam Brahmeti Vyajanad, Ananda Deva Karvimani Bhutani Jayante, Anandena Jatani Jivanti, Anandam Prayancha Vishanti, from bliss, all these beings are born. By this infinite bliss they are maintained, and into that bliss they merge at the end. But it isn't just joy as we normally conceive of it. It is that spiritual reality that remains after everything else has been negated. Not this, neti, neti is one of the descriptions of the Upanishad. What is Brahman? Not this, not this. Means it is not this, it is not that. It is not anything that you can point to. It is something which is inherent, which is the inner reality, which is the sine qua non, that without which it could not happen. Anything could not happen. It is that inherent oneness inside. It's called Ananda, but it's not bliss in the sense of euphoria or joy. It's bliss in the sense of total extinction of desire, total extinction of need, total extinction of variety, living in that unity, living in a unity. And that unity can never have had a beginning. It is a unity that was not created. It was not created at any time. It's not anything we make up and live within. It is the very essence of being, the very essence of reality. It is called Satchid Ananda, existence, consciousness, bliss. But these are approximate and distant indications. It is that when all multiplicity has been transcended and the essence has been seen, it is the essence of everything, and it cannot have any divisions. It cannot have anything that is more or less or different. This is how the Upanishads describe it. It is that which supports our very being. And all of our surface experiences in regard to those koshas, those levels that this boy was studying in regard to the physical level, mental level, energy levels, intelligence, everything that's, every aspect of our life involves something which comes and goes and stays, and something which is better or less. It involves some characteristics, but that which basically supports our life is pure existence. And that pure existence is what is really meant by joy. Joy is not meant by whoopee, I feel wonderful. That is at one level, at a very superficial level. That is at one of the earlier levels that this boy was considering. There is that type of bliss. But that which sustains the very existence of our awareness is infinitely satisfying, infinitely unmarred or unchanged. It's described in various ways in the Upanishads. The Isha Upanishad describes it as unmarred. And the Upanishad describe it as bliss or joy, but it is the very existence of our reality. And that very existence is unchangeable. That very existence cannot, that very existence is something which cannot have a setting, or it cannot have a rising and a setting, an increase or a decrease. Everything that can have an increase or a decrease is something changeable, and therefore is not the unchangeable basis that we're looking for. The unchangeable basis that we're looking for is something which is very real, very permanent. It is like, you could say in a very crude way, it's the blackboard on which all magnificent things are written. It's the It's the screen on which these magnificent movies are shown. Sometimes it is compared to a screen. In other words, suppose you're looking at a screen and you see a movie of a boat about to fall over Niagara Falls, and you see this boat approaching the edge of the falls, and it's about to go over, and oh, what tremendous emotions you have because of that. At that moment, you don't realize it's just a screen. Nothing is happening there at all. It is something that was made up, something that was designed to be like that. So this is our ordinary experience of life. We see this, all the things that come and go, all the things that appear and disappear. And they are associated with joy, they're associated with sorrow, they're associated with all the emotions of our life. But our whole life is based on something which never changes. And the purpose of meditation is to become aware of that which never changes. That's why meditation is one of the principal disciplines for reaching that. It shows you that beneath or at the heart of everything that changes, there is a reality which never changes, has never come into existence. And because it never came into existence, it can never go. There's no mechanism by which that which was not born can possibly die. These are the essential truths that religion is trying to teach. And this is the highest welfare of all. The subject is the welfare of all. This is the highest welfare of all. I mean, every other welfare you can give a person food, like Sri Ramakrishna did on the bank of the Ganges. There, food, clothing, all these things, you can satisfy that. But their hunger will come back, need will come back. Is there anything that you can do that will help in a permanent way, that will solve the problem forever? And literally forever. You may say, oh, that's impossible, that's just an ideal situation, it has nothing to do with reality and what we can really achieve. But that is not so. That is what religion really tries to reach, that which never changes. Normally we say there is no such thing. How can there be something that never changes? It's impossible to imagine. At some point it came into existence, at some further point it will disappear. But the whole idea of meditation is when we quieten the mind that goes to all these different subjects, we are able to slowly begin to perceive that at the heart of everything that changes, there is a reality which has never come into existence and will never go. It is something which is permanent, which has no change, which is all-pervading. Everything else is an appearance on that, just like a movie is an appearance on an unchangeable screen. So that is the highest welfare of all. That's the subject that we're discussing. If you can give something that is of use, in other words, if you can satisfy the hunger of a person at the present time, they will be hungry again. But you've done a great thing, and it helps us in so many other ways. It helps us to try to see that thing which is at the heart of everything that changes, that unchangeable reality. But just the gift of food is one aspect. The gift of, if you can teach the person how to grow food, you're giving more valuable advice to him, because now if you just give him food, he'll be hungry again. If you teach him how to create the food himself, he becomes self-sufficient and satisfied for a much longer period. So what is the longest satisfaction that we can have? That is to realize that which never changes. And that is what is meant by the experience of God. So sarva bhuta hite rataha, for the welfare of all beings, that is the maximum welfare. And so that is what we're really emphasizing. On the way, you satisfy the hunger, yes, because he is hungry. You know, it is a great thing to feed him. He needs clothing. It's a great thing to clothe him. Help him in so many ways. Helping this world in so many ways, that's a wonderful thing, because it enables this search for reality to go on. But what is the goal of this search? Where is it? Does it ever end anywhere? Or do we simply, at the end of our life, we simply, okay, this much I was able to do, and then we leave the scene? No, there is a satisfaction which is permanent, and that is what religion offers and refers to as that ultimate realization, which is called the knowledge of Brahman or Atma-jnana. It has different aspects, different ways of describing. And of course, it is a big science. It is not something that a short discourse between a teacher and a student can simply solve. Just, okay, I've solved the problem. QED, quod erat demonstrandum, that which was to be proved has been proved, fine. Now we go home and think of other things. No, this is a long time process which ends when our separateness ends, when we understand that we are one with that infinite reality. Then it isn't that it actually ends, the reality is revealed, and there's no further need for any further investigation or struggle. Thank you. The subject for next Sunday is the psychology of prayer. This talk will be given by Swami Vedananda. On Sunday evenings, Swami Vedananda holds an online class at 6 p.m. on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. The Zoom and YouTube links are available on our website's homepage, as well as in the monthly email bulletin. On Wednesday evenings, we have Vespers with meditation at 7:30 p.m. in this auditorium. On Friday evenings, Swami Vedananda holds a scripture class at the Old Temple at 7:30 p.m. Please use the auditorium entrance on Filbert Street. The current text for study is the Bhagavad Gita. The class is also streamed. Actually, I think next Friday the class will not be held, but normally it is held on Fridays. At present, the bookshop and library remain closed, and childcare is still not currently available during the lectures. Your cooperation in being fully vaccinated, wearing a mask, and maintaining 6 feet of distance is greatly appreciated. If you would like to make an offering, a collection plate will be available on the cart at the door as you exit. There is also a mounted offering box near the auditorium door in the foyer. You and your friends are cordially invited to attend all our services. Om Yahu Shanti, Antariksham Shanti, Prithivi Shanti, Apo Shanti, Roshadaya Shanti, Vanaspataya Shanti, Vishve Deva Shanti, Brahma Shanti, Sarvam Shanti, Shantireva Shanti, Sama Shantireti. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite, universal peace enter our soul and being. Oh, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.